Commissioners. Chairman Zarguni,
Present.
Vice Chairman Miller,
Here.
Commissioner York,
Here.
Commissioner Mandel,
Here.
Commissioner Salazar Garza,
Here.
Commissioner Munoz,
Here.
and Commissioner Motagi.
Here.
Quorum established.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to open the public comments regarding anything, any general comments, not any specific. If anyone would like to speak regarding anything, any item in general, please come forward to the podium. None, I will close that and move to approval of the absences for Commissioner York.
Move that we approve the absence of Commissioner York.
Second.
We have a motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to approval of the minutes from the commission meeting on November 16th.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes as presented.
We have a motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to discussion and possible action regarding the Planning Commission and airport zoning. Ms. Nina.
Good evening, Nina Nixon Mendez. We included the 2023 planning calendar in your agenda packet. And we did cancel, again, the meeting that falls during the winter break period and the affiliated application dates. Secondly, those dates that have an asterisk, we bumped the application deadline to a Friday because Monday was a holiday, so there were 3 dates that fell within the 30-day track application cycle. And so at this time, we are requesting a motion of approval for the calendar for next year.
Commissioner, any question for staff? Do I have a motion to approve the?
I make a motion, we approve item 2 as presented.
We have a motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to consent public hearing. I do like to request to pull item number 7 from the consent. Commissioner, is there any other item that you would like to pull from the consent agenda? Okay. We're ready for it.
Good evening, Commissioners. Mark Rocos, Senior City Planner with Development Services. I'm going to be reading into record items, consent items A and B. Starting with, actually, I'm only consent items A, I'm sorry. Starting with plats, I have number 3, Lexington subdivision. It's Block 2, lots 39A, 39B, 40A, and 40B. This is the final replat of .92 acres. Number 4 is Ramfield Estates, a preliminary plat of 95.95 acres. This is recommended for conditional approval as the wastewater waiver is going to be presented at the 12/14 PC meeting. Moving on with the item number 5 and number 6. It's a plat and sidewalk waiver for Yorktown Boulevard for Mustagasi Acres, final plat of 30.28 acres. All plats have met the TRC comments and meeting the Texas Local Government Code and UDC regulations. Staff recommends approval for all plats, and at this time, staff can answer any questions.
Commissioners, do you have any question for staff regarding item 3, 4, 5, and 6? None. At this time, I would like to open the public hearing. Does anyone would like to speak regarding any of the items number 3, 4, 5, and 6? None. I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion or further discussion.
I'll make a motion that we pass items number 3, 4, 5, and 6 as presented by staff.
Second.
We have a motion and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to Item number 7.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Hope you're all doing well this evening. Andrew Demas with Development Services, reading in tonight's item number 7, which is zoning case 1122-01. This is a request entitled Mustang Island Estates LP. The request is from the RMAT Multifamily District to the CN1 Neighborhood Commercial District, and it is located approximately about the midpoint of Mustang Island. Now, the property, as you can see, is vacant, as are surrounding properties. There are those that are zoned RMAT as well, which again is primarily a multifamily district that allows a few commercial uses. And across Highway 361 is zoned CR, which is Commercial Resort, which is primarily a commercial zoning district. The proposed use is a retail store. Now, of the 10 notices sent out, as of today, we have received 0 in favor and 0 in opposition. There were a few phone calls that came in of property owners outside of the notification area that did have some comments concerning the use and could be inferred as opposed, but I'm sure if they're here tonight, they will speak on those opinions. Now, based on the information as you read in your staff report and associated materials, the proposed rezoning is consistent with the future land use map. It is consistent with surrounding uses. Obviously, it's consistent with the commercial zoning across Highway 361. We, as staff, agree that the proposed development is compatible with surrounding uses, and therefore we are recommending approval of the change of zoning. And if there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to address them.
Thank you. Commissioners, Commissioner Miller.
Do you have a copy of the future land use map handy that you could bring up for this area?
Sure. Let's see. Might not be synced with this computer, but there's always a way. Oh, let's see. I think it's Office 365.
And while you're pulling that up, when was the last time this particular area was
That's
reviewed?
true.
Go ahead, Nina. Oh,
Right, that would be much quicker. Let's see, let's go to our UDC page. So those who've never spent time on the city's GIS, this is a good opportunity to show off a lot of hard work by our folks in the GIS department that every day put this map together of a ton of different layers providing information. And we'll turn on future land use. Let's grab that address. And it will take you right to the site.
sort
So
of.
our future land use, when we click on it, will come back as planned development, which is more typical of your PUDs that we see across the island. What it does mean is that it's open for both commercial and non-commercial uses. So obviously the shape of the subdivision will hint a little more at perhaps multifamily townhouse, some other level of development. In addition, you could have commercial, which RMAT is a good fit for that today, since RMAT allows hotels, it allows accessory shops if you're on the first floor of a hotel, let's say, but it does today allow some commercial uses. CN1 in our deliberation allows a few more commercial uses, such as a standalone retail use that's not dependent on being an accessory to another.
But this area of 361 isn't slated as a commercial corridor.
Not specifically a commercial,
Specifically.
but commercial is within the realm of an acceptable use in a planned development, future land use type.
Do you mind
And-
zooming out just a little bit so we
Sure.
can see where this is at?
It's just a little bit south of Port Royal.
And let's see if we can turn on an aerial. Maybe not. Oh, the plus, that's right. I have to add in. Go.
And the expressed, I always say, not intended, but the expressed purpose for the business is going to be a package store?
As of today.
Right.
But like many things in zoning, what is said today may not necessarily be what is said tomorrow. The CN1 district allows hotel uses, it allows medical offices, it allows your standard office, it allows retail. So it's not inherently limited to only a package store or off-premise consumption type of business.
Okay. All right, thank you. Those were my questions.
Not a problem, sir.
Is there any other question for staff? You good? Okay, at this time, I'd like to open the public hearing regarding item number 7. If anyone would like to speak regarding this item, please come to the podium. Please keep in mind that you do have a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. So once the timer starts and you hear the, ring, your time is up. So please be mindful of the time since we have few people that would like to speak. Please speak.
Okay.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. Name is Jeff Lineberger, and my address is 109 Mustang Island Estates. It's Lot 11. What I want to do is just very briefly focus on the suitability of the lot. Full disclosure, I'm a registered professional engineer here in the state of Texas. Been practicing 35 years. So basically what we have here is a conversion of an existing residential platted lot into a commercial lot. And when that happens, what needs to be done is that commercial lot needs to be sort of forced into the residential template. And since this lot is platted, it has been previously platted, what you're looking at is a lot of restrictions. And what those restrictions do is sort of squeeze down the buildable area, the developable area of the lot. We're looking at utility easement restrictions, emergency access easement restrictions, building setback restrictions, flood zone requirements. You have a flood zone, you got to build the lot up to achieve, the appropriate level.
Sir, respectfully, if you have any concern regarding the actual zoning or requesting the zoning of a case, because your concerns about developing the property falls into the
Right.
permitting department,
Okay.
that
This-
is
this
out
is-
of it,
Yes, sir.
purview
Yes,
of
sir.
this body, so please.
Right, so what I'm doing is I'm addressing the suitability of this lot for its intended zoning purpose.
Sure.
And what I'm saying here is that it's not suitable because what you have to do is you have to squeeze down the buildable area of the lot because you've got to put in parking, you've got to put in entrances into the lot. You have many existing restrictions, an emergency access easement restriction, along with traffic and vehicular restrictions as well. And so force-fitting this commercial template on top of a residential development, it necessarily increases the hazards, the vehicular hazards as well in the area of the development. You also have, traffic loading, traffic control that will require some sort of, turn lanes, signals, stop signs, things of that nature. And what all of that does is it consumes the buildable area. So it relegates the development into sort of a non-functional status. Is that
If
my
you would-
time?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, I'm Samara Lineberger, and I'm at 109 Mustang Island Estates. I appreciate you giving me a chance to talk, and I'm just going to be full disclosure, I'm an attorney, so I could talk for 30 minutes. So 3 minutes is really, really tough. But the reason I mention that is, if looking at the code requirements under 3.3.5, there are 4 criteria that the Commission needs to consider in terms of whether or not this is appropriate for rezoning. And I believe my husband was just addressing whether it's compatible. And I think that the problem is this is not really compatible. It's not even, it's just a little over 3/4 of an acre, and there's not a shoulder, there's a highway that's going at 65 miles an hour, trying to enter and exit a retail establishment that requires a certain amount of parking is going to create an additional hazard in terms of safety. You're going to have people, the volume of people that are going to be going to a liquor stores, which I understand what it's going to be, is going to be pretty heavy, and you're going to have a high-speed highway, unlike when you're further into town when there's stoplights. You're going to have people trying to exit and exit on this, and you're going to have parking on the shoulders. There's also an emergency access on the south side of that lot, so that could be blocked. There's problems with that as well. It also, what it does immediately, I know first thing people think of, we are a little community. We have 10 lots, okay, and it's residential. That's what it is. And we're looking at a situation where now we're facing somebody in lot 11 coming in and putting a tremendous amount of traffic and therefore security issues. So we are now going to feel compelled that we need to add a gate. We need to add a gate to the walkover because we can have pedestrian traffic coming right down the middle of the neighborhood over our private walkover, over our private road, to come down through the public road to go to a liquor store because it's more convenient that way. So we are forced to incur a tremendous amount of expense. It's not just, oh, gee, this is going to hurt our values. We don't know what it will do to our property values, to be honest. I mean, I think it's going to be negative, but it's somewhat speculative. What's not speculative is going to be what it costs us to beef up our security. And item number 4 of the review criteria says, does it have a negative impact upon the surrounding neighborhood? It absolutely does, an immediate cost to us to feel compelled that we now have to install a gate at the road, that we have to install a gate that has to be monitored daily. So the concern I have, I'm not for anti-development. Believe me, I'm a business person. But to me, the concern I have is it immediately puts on 10 families, 10 owners, to now install a gate system and maintain it. So it isn't just the initial cost, it's the cost over time to constantly have to maintain a gate in, Port Aransas weather and humidity. That is going to be an unfair cost disproportionately applied to us so somebody else can run a retail establishment. The intended purpose originally was primarily for some sort of like a triplex or maybe a couple of, some small little multifamily type living thing. That would be the most appropriate, perhaps
If you would
maybe a
please
professional office.
wrap up your comment. Your time is up.
I'm sorry, my hearing aids don't necessarily pick up the frequency of that beep, so.
We appreciate your comment. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thanks for giving me this time. My name is Leslie Keebler, and I own Lot 10, which is 132 Mustang Island Estates. I've been doing business as a restaurant owner and operator in Port Aransas for about 14 years now. I know the community really well. I understand the traffic. My business plans are built on understanding the numbers, okay? I actually looked at Lot 11 originally and decided that I owned Lot 10 and that it would not be conducive to even an upscale restaurant, again, for the traffic reasons and many, many other security issues. My thought is that, especially given that we now have a brand-new access road less than 1/4 of a mile from the entrance of Mustang Island Estates to the access road, that the amount of people that would be accessing that parking lot and basically our development would be in excess of, like, say, in the high season between April and September, about 45 to 50,000 people. Okay, and I base these numbers on knowledge of the area, the amount of people that would have to come in to support such a business. What does that do? What about the trash? What about security? I mean, we're a small community there. We all look at investing a substantial amount of money in building out very high-end properties, but they're properties that are not going to be lived in all the time. So there's a very huge security issue. Never mind just, I think, eventually a devaluation of our property. So I think that it's bad for the community at large. It's going to be bad for Seagull and Sandpiper. It's going to be bad for Port Royal. It's going to be bad for all of those communities along that area. It's just not conducive to what we're trying to do there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Heath Lossing. I'm an attorney. I represent the property owner in this particular case. I'm going to give you guys a little background of what happened here. My client established this and developed it as a planned unit development in 2003. That planned unit development included this particular lot and only this lot to be used as a commercial lot. I'm going to read to you from the declaration itself that says specifically lot 11 may be used for either residential or for commercial retail and for office buildings such office building may not exceed 3 stories. And so when they acquired this property, they bought it subject to the CC&Rs. My client then went to develop or to sell that property to somebody who wanted to use it for a commercial property, and we discovered that the city had annexed this after the planned unit development had been completed, and they then zoned it. Prior to that, this property had not been zoned at all. It was in the county, it was not in the city, and it was not within city limits. And so we're here today to ask that the commission allow it to be used as it was originally intended to be used. If you look at the actual map there, you'll see that there is a separation between the commercial element there on 361. There are ponds on either side of the drive that goes in, and then you have the residential behind that. And so this was specifically designed for that purpose, to have that commercial property in the front of where the residentials were to be, and it was platted, planned, and dedicated in that manner. Each of the property owners that are speaking today bought subject to that dedication, and it was only within the last couple of months that we discovered that this property had been rezoned essentially by the city as a result of an annexation that occurred after the dedication of the property. That's all I have for you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is David Cummings. I live at 19427 Strauss in San Antonio, Texas. I have a real estate development and management company, primarily tailored towards retail. I bought this lot 15 or so years ago, and I heard the reference several times tonight to a small community. A small community like this, people want to build a home to relax, enjoy the coastal environment, and I just think that a liquor store at the entryway of this development is just something that just does not fit the neighborhood. It would bring people coming in across the boardwalk, cause traffic concerns there on 361, which is already just a horrendous traffic nightmare with wrecks happening all the time. And again, I think having a liquor store there at the front of a very small development takes away from the integrity of what people bought in this project for. And that's just my general thought on the matter. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak regarding number 7? None, I will close the public hearing and entertain a further discussion from Commissioner York.
Just a question. The applicant's attorney stated it was originally in their plan, it was commercial. Is that something staff has reviewed? Can y'all confirm that?
If there are private covenants or anything deed restriction-wise, we as a city wouldn't have any type of authority to enforce. But no, we don't consider private covenants or deed restrictions at the time of zoning, since, again, we don't have the jurisdiction to enforce. So I did hear the term PUD, and we did double-check, at the time. So it is, at the time of annexation, of course, properties are zoned. It wouldn't carry any type of special overlay like a PUD, but if you do purchase, you would still be bound to it as a private property owner, and of course, if there's an HOA, they would enforce those covenants.
Thank you.
Commissioner Miller.
2 questions. Is Mustang Island Estates a private road?
Let's see, would have to double check the staff report. I believe it is a public street off the top of my head. Let's pull up the packet. It is, thank you.
Okay, second question, the 2 lots that are, that have the detention ponds on them, are those developable lots, or is that a permanent easement, drainage easement or something there?
Those are indeed drainage easements. I do recall that from the plat. They're non-buildable lots because they are to service as stormwater retention.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Any other question? Andrew, I have a few questions. One is, the applicant is proposing a CN1 zoning. Is liquor shop allowed under CN1 zoning?
A retail store is allowed in CN1. If you choose to have a package store, which is the most common name is a liquor store, that is considered a retail sales and service use, meaning whether you sell Beanie Babies or liquor, you're both considered retail. So there's not a specific restriction as far as distances or types of sales. If retail is allowed, all types of retail is allowed.
So therefore, liquor will be allowed. Is there any other commercial development around this area?
No, it's quite a desert of the lack of commercial. There have been several folks that have come in expressing ideas of gas stations, similar package stores at other points closer to the beach access roads. For that very reason, folks need fuel and folks buy things to consume on the beach. Whether it's alcohol or non-alcohol related, people are still going to purchase those items and bring them there. I do understand and empathize with the concerns, but the lack of commercial as a planner is still as much of a concern of not having that commercial availability, where you do need personal services anywhere you have a development of residences, just as you would need dry cleaners, retail stores, pharmacies, groceries. That's kind of what the whole idea behind the IGA on the island was. There was no grocery store. So having a retail business, which the jury is out whether or not this will be a liquor store. I think that's the one thing I want to make clear. The question tonight is whether or not commercial zoning is appropriate. Liquor store happens to be one of the allowed uses. It is not an absolute, meaning if you have commercial zoning, you will build a liquor store. That's an allowed use within the commercial district. But commercial zoning is needed in this area of Mustang Island.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner, any other question for staff? None. Do we have a motion regarding this item?
I make a motion, we approve item 7 as recommended by staff.
We do have a motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
You're opposing?
I'm opposing.
For the record, Commissioner Mendel is opposing. Motion carries. Moving on to item number 8. For the record, We are the recommended body for this item. Ultimately, this goes to the city council for the final decision. And I'm pretty sure the staff can give a date on when the council meeting will take place if you would like to meet. And you will get a notice in the mail. Thank you.
All right, good evening. I'm Bria Whitmire, Development Services Engineer, and we're talking about the Oso Creek Corner Phase 1 waiver request for alternative street sections and a reduced right-of-way width for Oso Parkway itself. So subject property, just an aerial map. We have Oso Parkway as a parkway collector, Yorktown. So some planning in the area. We do have the bicycle mobility plan that wraps around Oso Creek along the Oso Parkway. We also have the Trestle Bridge planning that's not too far away. The existing area looks something like this. We have multiple segments of Oso Parkway being built. So we'll be addressing that a little bit later. For the plat requirements themselves, I just wanted to stress how the plat is to follow the UDC, the master plans, any other adopted plans that the city has. With this, the developer should be following all of our requirements. So the plat was reviewed excessively on the street profiles in particular. These were put on the preliminary plat and approved. So this waiver request that was then submitted, it keeps the same for the east-west corridors. It's kind of hard to see, but Los Chicos and Mapache Pass stay the same. Where they're asking for deviation is along Oso Parkway, and then on the right is Osito. So we're going to look at Oso Parkway first, just because it's a little bit more involved. With the Oso Parkway, I wanted to note on here of the planned elementary and middle school. These are a big part of the subject, is the interactions that those are going to have. The next thing I wanted to just bring back up to light is the overall Oso Parkway plan. This was made back in the 90s with the idea to have a nice, natural, easy-flowing pathway all along the Oso. Per the UDC and the IDM, Parkway Collector requires that 80-foot right-of-way width. And if it looks familiar, this was a previous waiver that was approved to not construct the one-way bicycle traffic on either side, but this did not discuss reducing the right-of-way in any way. This was with the intention of having the 5-foot sidewalk on one side and 8-foot on the other, not reducing the street in any way. So for the Oso Parkway stretch, I'm going to try to go slow on this because of Oso Parkway, there's also two different sections being proposed here. So per the plat, the first top section from Yorktown to Los Chicos is the above section profile. So I know it's a little bit small on here, but we basically have that center turn lane and 2 drive lanes. So the proposed waiver isn't changing the makeup of the road as much as it's cutting off the sides and tightening in those sidewalks. So instead of a 4-foot buffer from the drive lane to the sidewalk, that's being shrunk down to a 1-foot buffer. Now this will be not just the schools in the area, but also commercial development in the future. Reducing this buffer with the amount of traffic that will be coming to and from these schools with a lot of pedestrian traffic, including kids, that buffer is concerning. And of course, also, even though the previous waiver was approved to not build the one-way cycle traffic at this time, reducing the right-of-way would make sure that it's never been built, that it will never come to light. So moving to the next section, it gets a little bit more critical because this is where the school will be at. So approved per the plat, we have a median that actually has a protected turn lane into the planned driveways of the school. So this is directing those movements to intersections where we want them. Other than that, it has that same extra space between the back of the curb and the sidewalk that you would want with a large pedestrian number. And then this proposed waiver is making this into basically a all for one open middle turn lane. So we wouldn't have those guided protected left turns into the school. It would just be a bit chaotic, and as well as reducing that buffer. So the northbound shoulder would also be, well, I'll get into more of the details of the layout of the school, but as I would imagine any of you have seen around a school, there's going to be people trying to turn right into the school that aren't going to be able just to turn right away. There's going to have to be a deceleration lane to turn into it. The school itself requires more things than just an Oso Parkway. This is more involved than that. So there was a TIA performed by the developer, which was reviewed by staff. This is a bit of an overall to show where closer to Yorktown, there's the commercial area, then the schools, and then, of course, some residential farther towards Oso. One of the biggest things that popped out to me in looking at the TIA is that it only went to 2030. And at first that sounded like a long ways away, but it's actually only 7 years from now, and which is scary enough. But the Oso Parkway, when it does tie in, will have traffic coming northbound. And in the TIA, it basically treats Oso Parkway as a dead end, that it will never connect. And so that part of the TIA in itself showed to me that it didn't look big enough. Like I said, the Oso Parkway plan was made back in the 90s. This is looking 7 years out. So this is where I was talking about getting into the layout of the school itself. So that in this part of the TIA, we have a driveway that's designated for buses only towards the top, closest to Yorktown. This is very close to the intersection and is making a bus making a left turn out of that intersection is a little skeptical. Then we have the actual turn into the school that is designed to hold the maximum build out of 1,000 trips. But those turns are still not being controlled with just an open middle turn lane. This is where that median, raised median with a controlled left turn to guide those turns. And then again, as I was saying earlier about a managed right turn lane into the property coming north. I said the TIA isn't accounting for any northbound traffic, but that's not to say it will be coming when the rest of Oso Parkway is built. I looked for quite a while to try to find the future school boundaries. There's not too much that I could find that was necessarily set, but suspect that it looks something like this. There is a discussion of a pedestrian-only connection to the west to Starlight Estates. So that in itself is recognizing that there's going to be traffic coming from the west. We know it's coming from the north on Yorktown. There's commercial development that's imminent all along Yorktown. So the traffic is going to be significantly more than what the TIA reviewed. Now to the other side, which is Osito Way. It's a little bit easier to look at, mostly because it's not talking about reducing that right-of-way. It was originally 60 foot, it's gonna stay 60 foot. What they're proposing is changing the 2 drive lanes with the 2 parking areas down to the same 1 turn lane in the middle, 2 drive lanes. So with this middle school on this side, the kids might be older, but there's still gonna be some chaos, kids running across the street and whatnot. So we want to have those parking lanes on the sides with a little bit more flexibility of traffic flow than making everything into this center turn lane. This is an image of something like what we're talking about, and I'm just hoping that this would make a clearer image of how chaotic an open middle lane can be. So with the plat waiver itself, as you know, we're trying to make sure that there's no issue with public safety, especially when there's kids around the area. And this is why several of us consider this being a very large topic, and which is why I'm on 24 slides and still going. So factors in support of the waiver is basically less green space for the city to maintain and allow more design flexibility for the developer. Factors against this waiver, as we've talked about, it violates the UDC, the IDM, the Oso Parkway plan. The rest of Oso Parkway is all 80 foot, including Rancho Vista, Azalea Estates, and Starlight Estates, all recent developments. This is a new development with no constraints. They have plenty of room for the 80 foot. They're not butted up to wetlands or anything like that here. The green space actually allows a buffer for pedestrians and allows with storm mitigation. While it might be more to maintain, there are benefits to that open space as well, and community beautification. The cross sections that are proposed are the biggest concern safety-wise. The areas where this has been used by other schools has proven to be chaotic, such as that picture demonstrated. So this is why staff from several departments, this isn't just me talking, this has been planning, public works, traffic engineering, as well as development services engineering, all getting together looking at this, and we all strongly recommend disapproval. And that is it. I know Renee was going to show up with some drone video. Yes, would you like to show the drone video? Let's see. Want the Barnes or the Haas? Both? Barnes first?
Good evening, Renee Couture, Public Works Interim Assistant Director. And what we wanted to show here, as Bria was discussing in the presentation, this is an example of a school located on an existing Oso Parkway, Collector Street. And let's see if the video's playing or not. I think it's playing.
They're moving.
They're moving.
Yeah, it's moving. Yeah, I see it slowly moving. So as you can see on the screen, this is an existing Oso Parkway Collector Street fronting a school. This is PM traffic, so this is what you may typically see with an elementary school type traffic in the afternoon. And in this situation here, we have the availability of on-street parking on both sides. So you see where parents have parked along the street, we have the travel lanes still open. In a scenario like what Bria was just discussing, if we were to get rid of the availability for on-street parking, you'd be left with just a center turn lane. And I'll show that in a separate example in just a second, where you're forcing cars to use that center turn lane as the through lane, and that's in both directions. We wanted to, in this particular case, our recommendation, and I know there's a lot of discussion on the site plan and the street layout. What we wanted to do is incorporate a median, and that median was basically for access management. Because in this scenario here, we have let me see if I could show it on the screen, if you can see my cursor. This parking lot, it's a teacher parking lot that's used for pickup to route one direction. So any traffic, and I'm gonna call this direction going eastbound, they're supposed to use this teacher parking lot to exit back onto Oso Parkway. All the other traffic you can see that's stacked on this other street here to the north, they utilize this horseshoe to come through the school and then exit back onto Oso Parkway to exit right. The reason this happened at this particular school is because of the conflicts that they were having, and they asked for some mitigation to help. And so with the available right-of-way that we had to change the direction and force the traffic direction and circulation around the school to prevent conflicting movements. Let's see if I can get out of this video. This is an example here, Haas Middle School, and this video was taken in 2019. It's not the most dramatic video we could find, lost some of the footage, but in this example, you'll see shortly, you'll see a fire truck coming through the middle. But on this particular roadway, this is McCardle Road, you have bike lanes on either side, you have 2 through lanes and a center turn lane. Here's the fire truck coming through. So you can see the challenges that happens, with that PM traffic and the use of the right-of-way. You have parents parked in the center turn lane. You have parents not wanting, they're parking in the bike lane in order not to get involved with the traffic on site. We had been asked to install a crosswalk. That's why we took this video, because we were asked to install a crosswalk. When we went out to investigate, we realized it wasn't a crosswalk issue. It was just the use of the roadway. And parents were asking their kids, and you could probably see in the video if I let it run, they were allowing the kids just to cross the street aimlessly to enter the vehicles where they had parked. So, when we see the request, for center turn lane, we have to consider all uses at all times and the impacts to all users, not only vehicular, but pedestrians as well. And the median, if you're familiar with the new Carroll High School that was constructed, it was one of the reasons why we recommended a median, and we paid for a median to be installed. And that's to prevent, you have traffic coming in either direction, going north or southbound, the left turn movements, the center turn lane, without putting a median to kind of mitigate access coming out of the driveway, forcing traffic right, forcing direction. You have an uncontrolled lane where you can have all movements and all uses, like you can see here, where parents are utilizing. And this is consistent with various schools throughout the city. We've been asked to investigate, and when we go out there, we see the same thing, where although there's queuing lengths may be provided on the site, what ultimately dictates is the principal, school pickups, different ages. And so the queuing length may be there, but when you're talking about different release times, multiple kids in one singular family, what's most convenient normally dictates. So in the end, we have to make sure that there's mitigation measures in place to keep this kid safe. Anyone has any questions?
Commissioner Miller?
Which streets are the elementary and the middle school going to front?
So
And where is the pickup and drop-off traffic going to mostly be queued from?
So for the elementary school, it will be coming off of Oso Parkway itself. So on this image, Oso Parkway is here. So the middle school isn't as far along on the site plan. It will be directly east of this. They actually share some parking right here. If you are able to see this super close, it says parking for future middle school. So the middle school will be to the east, which will be going onto Osito Way, which maybe this will show better. So everything will be off of this Los Chicos, but the elementary school will be on the Oso Parkway side, middle school on the Osito. That answer the question?
Yeah. Got it.
Commissioner York?
I just, I had a question on that last point about it being dangerous, the existing sections. I saw the videos, and obviously there's traffic, but what, can you give some example? I mean, have there been incidents out there? Any, I mean, it says it's dangerous, I'm just curious.
Yeah, at this particular school, like I said, Haas, the video we captured, it was based off of residents showing up to city council, asking for safety enhancements. And he referenced the accident at King High School where a student was killed a few years ago, where there were two students crossing a crosswalk and one was killed. It was due to a driver running through the traffic signal. But he highlighted that instance, with regards to safety. So when we went out there, we realized it wasn't a crosswalk issue, that parents were parking in the center turn lane and asking their kids to cross. So, that street was reconstructed as a result of an accident years ago where a pedestrian was walking on McCardle and she was killed. It was a two-lane section with a ditch. So that was improved with sidewalks, the center turn lane, and bicycle lanes. At this particular school, I think with CCIC combined schools, it increased the traffic volumes coming there. And like I said, there were concerns about safety with the kids crossing across that corridor. That's why we went out to investigate. At the other location, Barnes, we had complaints about parents U-turning, kids being dropped off where they were crossing. So we went out there to try to figure out a mitigation method to separate the parking and the circulation. So that's why we went at that location. But there's been several schools we could name where we've been out. We have video, we have footage. It's not only CCISD, TM, ISD as well, Flower Bluff ISD. They have several schools on the same corridor where we've been out to investigate those locations as well. And so when we're looking at a school site and mitigation, and I guess where the concern is, I could pull up the map for the school site. Our concern in this particular location and for the reduction, I guess the request for the reduction of right-of-way, is once you reduce it, there's no capacity to add or, additional room to include mitigation measures that could help. Once it's reduced, you're stuck with the cross-section that's there. So looking at what typically happens in the afternoon, our concern was once you get to this intersection of this first cross street, all traffic entering in would have to take a left turn movement into the facility. As Bria was saying, once that other collector is built coming from the Rancho Vista area, Oso Parkway will connect. You'll have traffic possibly going northbound to turn right. You'll have traffic coming southbound to make a left. A center turn lane will force, like you've seen in that situation at Hamlin, parents to park in the center turn lane if they don't want to get stuck in this long queue of traffic. And you have parents arriving as early as 50 minutes to come pick up their kids. It wasn't shown in this particular example at Barnes, but in that roadway, we've seen where parents literally park in the travel lane and they block any traffic from going any direction. So in this case, that widened right-of-way would allow us to install a median or allow the developer to put in a median that would keep that traffic in that lane, that storage area, and allow through traffic to continue. In the event you have an emergency, like you saw in the Haas video where you have a fire truck coming through, they're not having to get stuck in that traffic, because it does happen. But once they exit out of the facility, they would be forced to go right. And at that point, they can continue north. Eventually, when the school site is built out, and I think by the time the middle school is built out, they're proposing that Oso Parkway and Yorktown should have a signalized intersection. So at that point, anyone leaving Oso Parkway should be able to leave safely. But in regards to requests, we do receive various requests yearly to go investigate several schools throughout the city. And it's usually to deal with the PM traffic.
Okay. Also got a question about, you were talking about the elimination of the on-street parking on either side. And I know that's typically how the collector street is set up. But I also saw the previously approved one with the median, the street section that was approved with the plat before, didn't have on-street parking. So I'm just curious, is it, with everything you're talking about, is it preferred that there be on-street parking in front of a school or not?
I think with the
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just want to clarify, I think it's Osito Way that has the on-street parking, so it'd be on the middle school side. That has the 2 travel lanes and then the 2 lanes of on-street parking.
Right, but the original OSO had a median but no on-street parking.
That is correct.
And I'm just asking, is from everything you're talking about, is the on-street parking helpful or does that hurt when you're, like in that video, everybody's
It
parked
helps.
along the side?
I mean, it does help, but I think with the available right-of-way, the way this was designed, it was designed as an Oso Parkway collector, so we were making use of that right-of-way, the best use. And the best use in this case was to get rid of the on-street parking and allow mitigation for the left turns in.
Okay, thank
If
you.
we had a wider right-of-way, then we would probably accommodate that on-street parking, but we had to mitigate.
Any other question for staff? Commissioner Morales, you good?
Other than just a general question, I've been trying to figure out how on earth Oso Parkway is ever going to connect. Because where it dies at King's Crossing, it dies into what appears to be kind of a gated community. And there's no clear path other than, you know, through very difficult to develop land to get all the way over to this area.
Okay. That's. Oh, shoot. All right. If. Oh. Well, luckily Gina printed everything out, so page 3, if you want to look at your hard copies.
Always have a backup plan.
Yeah, the bicycle mobility plan, that path would be the last best guess at it. Agreed, we don't know exactly where it might be, suppose, but that's where it goes along with development, just like this portion within OSO, they jogged the plan a little bit to match the development. As development goes, they can adjust that line and depending on the developer and the situation. So it's not defined on a survey, but it will connect somehow, is the overall idea.
Because to me, there's kind of two things at play here. There's, first and foremost, public safety, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's congruence with the rest of Oso Parkway. That's come up in the last hearing about the sidewalks and the two-way bike lanes and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I just keep on scratching my head on how is this ever going to connect? And, you know, is it, and the city's planning, I mean, is it going to be on a bond issue at some point, or like what's the plan for connecting these two pieces? Because there's not really any, you know, you've got Rancho Vista, which is pretty much built out as far south as possible. So I don't imagine it's on a master plan for Rancho Vista to have a segment of Oso Parkway built out at some point. So
The stretch that they have, the portions of Oso Parkway that have been built so far have maintained the 80-foot. That's the most, the nearest ones in the area, the Azalea Estates, the Starlight, they've all maintained that 80-foot for the cause. I suppose if we knew exactly where it was, everybody could plan for it now, but we just don't know how the development's going to work out.
and then the segment basically between, you know, that captures, you know, if everything gets built out as per the, you know, kind of master plan on page 15.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm talking about the segment between Street A and Street B. I can't recall what those are.
Sure, yeah.
That's,
The top one is, I believe, Los Chicos.
Yeah, Los Chicos and
The bottom one is Mapache Pass.
Apache Pass. I mean, I'm kind of getting mixed signals. Would that segment of Oso Parkway be preferred to have the 2 center lanes, no turning lane, and parking on either side?
So another part of this that I almost jumped in is Oso Parkway is going to have more heavy on the commercial side than Osito Way will. So Osito Way had the parking on the side. It's going to be a little bit more off path. Oso Parkway itself, if I go back to the land use map, that was actually used in the TIA, you'll see how Oso Parkway cuts right through the commercial part at the top. Oh, y'all screens are working again? Awesome. The Oso Parkway is cutting right through that commercial area at the top. And that's why a turn, there's going to be more turning traffic into those businesses than farther down Oso Parkway, where we're looking at making that protected median turn. It's different dynamics on Oso Parkway than it is Osito Way, and even the cross streets. There's a little bit of a different situation for each one of those, which was looked at in depth during the plating process. So this waiver kind of takes it back to the drawing board, but as Renee was saying, a lot of reducing this right-of-way takes a lot of possibilities out in the future.
And just to interject also, the center turn lanes are used at typically signalized intersections as well. And so that portion that intersects with Yorktown, that will eventually be signalized. So, a center turn lane would be appropriate for that. Now, on the roadway that has the parking and the 2 lanes planned now that they want to use a center turn lane on and eliminate the parking, that's really not appropriate because that street will not have a signalized intersection.
Which street is that?
Osito Way?
Osito Way.
That's the, okay.
And I'll bring out, so on slide 16, it has some of those planned intersections with those 2 signalized along Yorktown.
I've got a question. Can you go back to that last slide you were on?
This guy?
Yes. So, because one of these comments says that, it's inconsistent with the Oso Parkway plan, which obviously it is, but it's frustrating for me because Oso Parkway, where it's shown, is already inconsistent because it should be where secondary collector street is here. But I understand that was a UTP amendment. What was the reason for that? Why is Oso Parkway not following the creek here?
The primary reason is we are in progress of reconstructing Yorktown, it's under design right now. And where it was originally, Oso Parkway was originally located, it was too close to the bridge entrance. And so it was primarily a safety concern there and a design concern. And for that reason, the collector and parkway were switched. Now, there was not a formal amendment, but because all the property owners were in agreement with that, it was done administratively.
But I'm just
it
curious.
Didn't impact
this
other
is not,
properties.
Not really something we're looking at here, but just, the whole point with the Oso Parkway was to have the meandering trail up against the Oso. Was there any thought about doing that along secondary collector street where it's shown here and not? I understand there's going to be a school, but doesn't really have anything to do with Oso Parkway. So I'm just curious if that was ever talked about.
From what I understood, that was still too close to the bridge. No?
To do the sidewalk there?
Right. Well, I think if you go back to Osito Way currently, as I guess they've proposed. As they proposed, they showed an 8-foot, I believe.
Yes, for the Osito Way and for Oso Parkway, on one side is a 5-foot sidewalk and 4-foot buffer, and the school side would have the 8-foot sidewalk with that 1-foot buffer. That's the part that tightens it up on
And then
Oso.
can you go to the existing?
The plat, or you mean the picture?
The existing cross-section for Osito Way. So you can sort of see the contrast there. So I believe they have a 5-foot and a 4-foot sidewalk proposed, or approved with the plat.
I guess what I'm asking is, they're asking to reduce to 60 foot here, and I'm not really talking about traffic. They've got their TI. I'm sure the developer can talk to that. But as far as the OSO, so the only reason that I understand OSO Parkway is 80 foot versus 60 foot, it's the same section as 60 foot, but it has the wider green space on one side with the windy sidewalk that's up against the Oso Creek. What I was asking is, would it make sense here to allow Oso Parkway to be 60 foot and function as a regular collector, and then make this other street that actually runs along the Oso, the 80 foot with the hike and bike trail?
Yeah, again, we're opposed to that.
But y'all looked at that?
Yes,
Is that the same safety issue with the bridge?
yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Just to piggyback off of what Michael was talking about, if you look at the proposed street section, it's not to scale.
True.
And you've got a 5-foot sidewalk and a 4-foot buffer from the edge of the sidewalk to behind the curb. And on the side where you have an 8-foot sidewalk, you only have 1 foot from the back of curb to the edge of the sidewalk.
This says Osito Way though. Is that, I know it's not Moses' term, but he said that was a typo. Is that supposed to be 8 feet on Osito?
The proposed section for Oso and Osito is the same per this waiver. Now, the approved per plat, there was actually 3 different cross profiles. There was 2 along Oso Parkway and 1 for Osito. This waiver is just 1 for all of that. Same treatment for all of Oso Parkway and all of Osito Way.
Yeah, it's on slide 8 as well.
Yeah, I see that.
Because personally, the need for 80-foot dedication is arguable, but I'd like to see that buffer being larger to that sidewalk with the adjacency to the school, since the 8-foot sidewalk is going to be on the side of the school. And then I also have concerns with both a turning lane and a median, because of just from my personal experience in pickups and drop-offs, and I know because my kid goes to Flower Bluff and at the primary school, and you're dropping off along Hustling Hornet, and it's they have police officers at those approaches that kind of mind traffic and stop oncoming traffic, but it's the same situation where you've got parking on either side of the road and just 2 center drive aisles. And so I can understand the need to want to direct traffic and delineate with a median, but also I think that on-street parking is necessary for stacking.
And this is part of where the protected median left turn lane is, having that extra width for that extra pass-through lane, similar to the topic of ambulances coming through, fire trucks coming through, having that extra width for something to go through there.
Okay.
In particular in front of the school.
All right. Now I understand it. All right, thanks.
At this time,
I got one more question for staff.
yes, sir.
Sorry, one
Commissioner
last
York.
question. There's a couple of comments in here about the TIA, and I just want to ask, was the TIA, the final version, has that been submitted to staff?
What we were provided was the draft November 2022. We actually asked that exact question, and they stated that that was the latest and greatest, and the only reason it was draft was it hadn't been changed yet, basically, that it was the final report. So that was what was reviewed and utilized for these screenshot images. That's all of the latest TIA. I said the biggest thing about that, aside from not showing that northbound traffic if Oso Parkway ever connects, which hopefully someday, maybe, But the most disturbing is that it only did 7 years, and the footprint of the TIA did not extend to the potential school boundary that will be taking place. So if the TIA is looking at a smaller window than the footprint of the population of the kids that are gonna be coming in, there's a difference there. And that's why there's multiple reasons why the TIA, it was reviewed. There's some holes in it.
Are they required? So I know there's parameters set for the TI. Are they required to go beyond 2030 or go across Yorktown? Or why did they stop, I guess, is it?
That question has come up a few times.
Yeah, I know, I worked a little bit with the scope, Diego, before he's no longer with the city, but he worked on the scope with the developer. But they did consider full build-out with the school, with, you know, the first phase, and I think it might be on that one sheet, where it shows that the first phase is the elementary school. Where's that sheet? Sheet was it? The first phase, I know it did consider, it's this sheet. So the first phase right at the top, you'll see it considered just the elementary school site itself, and then the second, phase 2 considered, you know, traffic and build out with the elementary and the middle school and the mixed uses in there. But, you know, there are some questions we still had with the TIA. They did reference, although they made the recommendation in there to have the reduced right-of-way. I know Diego worked with the engineer, and there was a memorandum in there that stated that basically, you know, if the city did have some objections with the traffic study, you know, we wanted to make sure that these mitigation measures were in place. And so there was a memorandum of understanding inserted in the TIA. But one of the things I wanted to note on, you know, with the school site itself was that, you know, the school site, there are different things that happen in the progression of the development of the school site and the street layouts. And so what we were trying to do with the mitigation measures, understood that you can get it to work with on-street parking, you can get it to work with the center turn lane, but based on the design, and if this footprint doesn't change, then we have to look at what that traffic would look like with this footprint. And based on this footprint, with it not changing, you then have to consider, do we need other measures to mitigate possible movements, conflict points, and try to minimize those. So that's why the median with that 80-foot right-of-way with the Parkway collector fronting this on this side, that's why it was utilized to include the 2 through lanes and a median. If the layout was different, then maybe other considerations for on-street parking or whatnot would be considered, but based on this particular layout of the school, we have to work with what's there and what's being proposed, and so that's why.
I have one last question. I'm looking at this site plan, and this is the first time I've seen this school site plan, so bear with me, but the street yard from the face of the school to Oso Parkway is pretty narrow, and you got a lot of stuff stuffed in there. Was this designed with an 80-foot right-of-way in mind or a 60-foot right-of-way in mind?
I think it's 60. I think it's the intention that was the goal.
And why was that? I mean, is it just based on assumptions, or because the preliminary plat was submitted with an 80-foot right-of-way?
I can't even.
Hi, Al Raymond, Development Services. Yes, the preliminary plat was submitted with an 80-foot right-of-way, but the building started without a permit. Once we stopped the building, the slab is already there. So the preliminary plat came to this group, and the slab is already poured. So you had to design around, mitigate around, and even though the plat came before you and said, hey, it's 80 feet, when we talked with the developer, who will remain unnamed, the question came up and said, hey, 80 feet, we need more space because it is a narrow gap between the face of the school and the major collector. It's really kind of silly, unfortunate, I should say, but that's why we're kind of in this awkward circle of, hey, why can't we just, do the 80-foot street and the building will relate itself according to the width of the street, but that's not the case in this because the building kind of took off before it should have, actually.
Thank you for that insight, Mr. Raymond.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to open the public hearing regarding this item. Please keep in mind, for the sake of time, you have 3 minutes to speak. I ask the applicant to come first. State your name and address for the record.
Does the applicant only get 3 minutes as well? Because I've got about 45 minutes worth of comments after all that. And 25 pages of presentations, there's no
I
way
will
I could.
consider a few more minutes, but not more
Okay.
than that. So please make it quick and
Okay.
wrap up your comment, please.
So Andrew, if you could come up here and direct this presentation so we can go through all of the things that y'all said, please. So just to kind of start off with what Mr. Al Raymond said, about a year and a half ago, we came to the planning department. Prior to about 6 months ago, traffic engineering just took over the transportation plan. We had a big meeting of all departments, and Diego, who no longer is with the city, requested/guided us to submit a preliminary plat and a master plat to this body with his recommendation of a cross-section which included a median, which I might add doesn't exist in any cross-sections that the city has for Oso Parkway, and no other Oso Parkway is designed this way. But we did it because we were asked to do that. But with that same stipulation, Development Services plus Public Works required us to get a TIA. We spent over $50,000. Takes 3 months to get a TIA. That TIA, even though their department has it, we requested before Diego leave that we go over these questions and concerns. We never got a phone call back from Public Works to go over those comments. We did get an email from Development Services with 2 questions. So we're here to answer those questions, but our TIA specifically states the information about what size streets you need, what size streets you need. It does actually take into consideration more of the traffic that's illustrated here. That's why I asked for more time. It does take into consideration Oso Parkway being connected, and Michael, I can tell you the exact connection points because I own most of the land and know all the landowners. All of this will eventually connect to Cimarron, but you have to go through Cimarron. You cannot come through Staples. You have to go down Cimarron because you're exactly right. There's a gated community that chops it off. Oso Parkway is chopped off in probably about 10 different places. It'll never connect fully because some of it goes through the Navy and some of it goes through King Ranch and some of it goes through wetlands. Oso Parkway was forced on this area, again, by one person who doesn't work at the city, to answer your question on why it's not along the Oso. Every Oso Parkway is supposed to be along the Oso. Actually, if you read what the city recommended as the 1985 UDC, it says it's supposed to be along the Oso. All of those comments there say Oso Parkway is in the wrong spot, but we were forced to put it there. We weren't allowed to move it. The name of the street is called Oso Parkway. Both parallel streets are C1 collectors. Same size street, same depth street, same width street. The name Oso Parkway, because it ends with a parkway, requires an 80-foot right-of-way because they use it to cut the grass. Every other Oso Parkway is along the Oso. So you need that 20 feet to mitigate to not get into the wetlands. This Oso Parkway is not along the Oso. It's just a normal C1 collector in the middle of a street. When you go through the presentation, some of the stuff they showed you, a middle turn lane on McCardle is not a middle turn lane on a private development. McCardle, everybody here has driven on McCardle. If you go from Airline to Ennis-Jocelyn on McCardle, it has a lot of heavy traffic on it. So you have to do TIAs to evaluate the school in the area. We have plenty of queuing. The TIAs were requested to even get a permit for the school. We worked in hand with the school to provide adequate parking. It has more than adequate queuing. And I've got my engineer on the line. I don't know if he can get 3 extra minutes, but we're here to answer any questions, concerns. I'm trying to hit all the points they hit. And something that I didn't understand, the bridge The fact, again, you go back to Oso Parkway, you still have a road that comes out at the bridge. It's not a safety concern if the road is going to be there. It could have been called Osoceta Parkway, it could be called Oso Parkway, it could be called Parkway. It's still going to be a road at the bridge. The signalization was always designated to be at the closer point. You could have called that road Osocito and across the street Oso Parkway. Again, the cross sections don't mess with any of your alignments, so all of them will still align. I will actually add another thing that this body probably should know. When you design a 40-foot street, the city of Corpus Christi allows streets one way to be 11 feet wide, a middle turn lane to be 12 feet wide. We didn't go the smallest streets that the UDC allows in the cross section. We planned it based on the TIA again. Everything we did that we came back that we told we were going to be allowed to do at this stage was based on us being requested / forced in getting a TIA. Why would I have gone and got a TIA if Diego told me to just go with this? We would have just left it that. Then we were told to get a TIA. We gave the information to the city, and we're still actually waiting for the city to engage with the engineering department to go over all of that, because there's some bits of information that they're not reading right. You know, Renee's talking about queuing and traffic peaks. That's all in this TIA. It's actual data that they spent for 3 months to come up with based on 60 schools, the size schools. They also worked with CCISD because, again, at a recommendation of Public Works to come up with a mitigation plan for on-site parking. You've got 55% of your parking can be on-site. They've looked at the different queue times for drop-off, pickup. We have all that information. Even the turn lane right now, every car has 25 feet of spacing. You can get 114 vehicles inside just the turn lane for the queuing. We don't even anticipate a queue of over 80. Again, the TIA has a lot of data in it. It does actually, the reason they showed the non-connection of Oso Parkway, because all of the traffic that comes in from the school, whether it's from the north or the south, is still the same traffic. The peak doesn't change. What they can anticipate in, and it's in the MPO plan, and we talked about these TIAs actually being really valid for 5 years, is because other streets like Rodfield Road that will eventually go over the Oso will come into play and alleviate traffic off of Oso Parkway. So as Oso Parkway does get extended, some traffic comes on. But as Rodfield gets extended down all the way to Oso Parkway, people are going to alleviate themselves to go onto Rodfield to Yorktown rather than Yorktown all the way through a loop to come out at Mudbridge. Again, the TIA has all that information and notes in there. And I've got my engineer on the line, so if you guys have any questions, it's a traffic engineer. They can, answer any of that. And I hope I tried to cover as many of the points that they went over to alleviate another traffic. Go ahead.
1 more minute to wrap up the comment.
Well, I'll
Some
just ask
questions,
if
please.
anybody has any questions.
Okay, Commissioner, at this time, if you have any question for the applicant, I'd like for you to ask at this time.
Yeah, I do. On this, well, it's on our page 21, your Osito Way section. I heard you mention something about a typo earlier, so I just wanted to clarify. It shows an 8-foot sidewalk on one side.
It's supposed to be a 5-foot sidewalk, so that's a standard 40-foot right-of-way where you have your standard sidewalks. Now, what we're proposing on this is whatever the city wants to do as far as striping. The TIA says have a middle turn lane, no on-site parking. Again, if the city chooses to stripe it differently, the size of the road makes no difference. It's where you put your stripes. It's still a 40-foot back-to-back street on Osocito Way. So really, that's not a waiver. That's just the city, when they come to stripe it, if they want to do the on-site parking, as they showed a bad example of, and do that, that's fine. If they want to do the turn lane with the bad example they showed, that's fine as well. But you can do either one with that cross-section. The main waiver is for Oso Parkway because, again, for 1.5 years when we planned this, we had a collector there. Many departments at the city saw it. Nobody brought it up until about 3 months ago. We had to start submitting plats to accommodate, obviously CCISD and where they were in their process. And this is really where we're at right now, and you're not going to lose any pavement section. You are going to have a sidewalk within 1 feet of a curve. I know Mr. Miller brought that up as a safety concern. I will say, as a land developer, there's probably 10% of neighborhoods in town that sidewalks are actually touching the curve, tied into the curve, or within 1 foot of it, and there's examples of plenty of other schools that have your sidewalk within 1 feet of your curve. You know, I mean, the thing, this is an 8-foot sidewalk. I mean, we can all walk outside and get hit by a bus the minute we walk out, whether you're on a 1-foot sidewalk or 8-foot sidewalk. I live near where you have the elementary school on Slough Road. Before there was 4 lanes, there used to be people queuing in the dirt roads, right? Now there's a median and people still queue on the dirt roads and they jump over the median to cross the street. So when you say the examples of, well, if somebody parks here, makes their kid go that way, we can't control how human beings work. We can control how the roads work, but if you look at putting a median in the middle, you're just going to have everybody go to the bottom of that median and do a turnaround, because this is a residential road. This is not McCardle. This isn't where through traffic is happening. This isn't where 10,000 cars go through a day. The highest peak of vehicles traveling in and out of this neighborhood is going to be 207. That's the highest. Again, that's the TIA.
Any other question for the applicant?
I guess my
Miller.
concern is I'd much rather see the parking on either side, on-street parking with 2 center lanes. Is there any objection to that on Osito Way and the segment of Oso Parkway between the two, whatever the heck they're called? I can't read any of this stuff, it's so small. But basically, the segment that is not within the commercial side, because there is a way to transition from on-street parking with 2 center lanes to either something with a median or something with a center turning lane.
Which road did you say, Oso Parkway
I'm
or
talking about
Osito?
Oso Parkway and Osito, because I'm just now realizing that that part of the waiver is for Osito to depart from having the on-street parking with 2 drive lanes to a center lane with or a turning lane.
That's what the TIA is requiring for queuing purposes and for traffic mitigations. And I can have my traffic engine
Osito?
on both streets. I mean, the way we've got what we've proposed, Osito, you can pick either, I mean, the city can pick either way, but yes, we are proposing to still have your right-hand, left-hand turn lane, no parking on the sides.
And then the other consideration, I know we're talking about the buffer between the curb and the sidewalk, and being a father of a child that rides her bike, and obviously the bike traffic is going to migrate towards the 8-foot wide sidewalk because it's larger, right, and it's adjacent to the school. She rides her bike and constantly is veering off the sidewalk and hitting between the grass and the sidewalk and falling, right? And in my neighborhood, in most neighborhoods, you've got a minimum of a 3-foot buffer behind the curb. And here you're gonna have a heavily trafficked area, and you're gonna have this much space. That's 12 inches, right? So if she hits that, runs off the edge of the pavement and falls, you know, I would almost rather it be all concrete all the way to the curb.
We can do that.
Because it's not, it's not a fall hazard, you know, if you veer off a little bit.
To accommodate safety, I don't mind adding a foot. It's not the end of the world. We'll assume that cost. It's still not going to change the right-of-way, which, you know, helps us in what we need to do and follows the TIA. I mean, putting a larger sidewalk isn't the end of the world for us, and we don't mind doing that. So if that's a recommendation that this body has, we would accept that recommendation.
Commissioner York.
Thanks. You mentioned that The street section you're proposing in lieu of the on-street parking was per the TIA, and I'm just curious that when the TIA looked at the other section that has on-street parking, did it consider the on-street parking lanes to be as something that could be used for queuing? Even though they're considered parking lanes?
Can you ask that one more time?
So in the TIA, did they consider, in their model with the street section that had on-street parking, did they consider the on-street parking lane something that could be used for queuing?
Did you hear that, Peyton?
We did not assume any on-street parking for queuing.
And everybody can hear you. So, thank you.
Okay.
Anything you'd like to add, Peyton, as far as TIA data that you'd like to share before I leave?
Sure. If I could just have maybe 90 seconds. Good afternoon, Planning Commission.
Sure.
Thank you.
My name is Peyton Aarons. I'm the transportation engineer who produced the TIA. And I'll start with Oso Parkway. The city requested a northbound right turn lane to store vehicles waiting for student pickup. And we're providing 3,000 feet of stacking on site, so on the elementary school property. And all vehicles expected to pick up their children can be stored on site. Therefore, the right turn lane isn't necessary. And a 3-lane section adjacent to the school is sufficient. This 3-lane section can be accommodated within the 60-foot right-of-way. And if you'd like to accommodate an 8-foot sidewalk and 4-foot landscape buffer on both sides of the street, then you could narrow the lanes to 12 feet, and that would reduce your pavement section to 36 feet. And that would give you enough space for the landscape buffer. That's another alternative. The city's design criteria prefer 11-foot travel lanes and a 12-foot center turn lane. And having lanes that aren't excessively wide will slow traffic. And with regard to whether it's a flush median or a raised median, that won't impact the right-of-way that's required. But if a median is installed, then a southbound left turn lane should be provided at the entrance of the school. Majority of vehicles will access the school from Yorktown Boulevard, and there will be many gaps for southbound left turn vehicles to enter the school because the northbound volume along Oso Parkway will be low. Regarding Osito Way,
I ask that you please wrap up the comment, please, for the sake of the time, if you don't mind, please.
Sure. For Osito Way, the center turn lane is needed north of Street A because there will be commercial development with many driveways. But south of Street A, the on-street parking is fine. You could do on-street parking or a center turn lane between Street A and Street B. That's the end of my comment.
Thank you. Okay.
Any other questions?
Any other question for the applicant?
Just out of curiosity, it was submitted as an 80-foot right-of-way, and then property changed hands. CCISD starts building their school without a permit, apparently. Where did the 60-foot come into play?
60-foot came into play 2 years ago when I got with Dan McGinn and planning. They've had this plat for over 2 years. They've known it's 60-foot. Diego came in on the last meeting that we had when we wanted to submit our plat and said Oso Parkway has to go here. Oso Parkway is an 80-foot right-of-way. You have to put Oso Parkway here, or you're not going to get your plat through to Planning Commission until you provide a TIA. So we were able to follow his comments, follow what we call the most extreme. And once we were provided, or once we got the TIA, we were supposed to provide that to the city to update our plats, because really the construction of a road comes in the construction plans. That's the meat and bones. You're seeing the 360 purview of it. The comments of trying to expand a road or, tomorrow you're going to do traffic mitigations, well, that's why we spent the $50,000 now. That's why we did the on-site parking. That's why the queuing is there. You've got to follow the data. I mean, that's the whole point of why we did this. I mean, why would the city force me or require me to get a TIA? Why is the city hiring a TIA, what I call specialist, to read TIAs? Because they want to start asking us land developers to provide them the data so you can run with it. I mean, almost. It's supposed to make their job easy. But right now, with all the school problems, and I'm stuck in that because I'm the land developer, but they bought property. What they did with development services is what they did. But because both things are kind of happening at the same time, I'm dealing with all this stuff that you have to deal with on a plat when this really is stuff you deal with as a permit because it's simultaneous. Again, these are requests from Public Works and Development Services that we go through this process this way.
And so it never came up after a building permit was actually obtained that the way they have their site laid out was not going to work with what was submitted on the preliminary plat as the right-of-way for Oso Parkway?
Well, I'll say one last thing. We did want to submit with the 60-foot, but again, we weren't allowed to submit our plat because it was not going to be presented to Planning Commission unless it had the cross-sections that Public Works wanted. We accommodated that with the agreement that once we get the TIA, if the TIA supports their analysis of what they want, then that's what we'll do. But if it doesn't, then we would want to go back to what we have at every Oso Parkway today, which is a 2-lane road. And I mean, it is an 80-foot right-of-way, but shrinking to a 60-foot right-of-way doesn't change the road, doesn't change anything in this particular case because you're not abutting the Oso where you need to cut the grass. So.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to speculate on what this body's going to do, but I think that there's a huge lesson to be learned here that you put the cart before the horse.
That lesson is for the city,
all
not me.
on speculation on what may or may not happen is kind of a...
I'm the land developer here. I'm not picking and choosing between those comments that you're making. I have followed what everybody has asked me to do from day one for over 2 years now, from every department in this city. What I'm saying is if you're not going to follow a TIA, a transportation plan, a study done, why was it requested? If we're going to try to poke holes in it, why didn't staff take the time to contact the guy on the phone, spend time with him to go through every one of these items so I don't have to get shut down or upset the other 100 people here who want to talk as well? I mean, we try to do all this beforehand, but yes, this is moving at a fast pace. I want to make sure you guys understand it. I don't think an example of McCardle is the same thing as what we're proposing here, but you heard from the TIA expert, you can do exactly that on the portion that you asked, Osito, if you want to do on-site parking. But again, that's going to be a city decision on the way they stripe the street.
Okay, thank you. Any other question?
I have one question, and it's really Moses' question. What is the city's stance on the TIA? If you're requesting a developer to spend X amount of dollars for a TIA, why would you not go with their recommendation? It's a question.
I'm thinking that the best way to answer that is if you ask somebody to do your driveway and then you look at it and it's pebbles instead of concrete.
But they're licensed engineers, is that correct? Traffic engineers?
They're a big firm out of Houston. They've done 100 of these. I mean, probably all of Houston's TIAs. I mean, they're very well respected.
Yeah, I'd like to interject on that one. One of the issues related to the Oso Parkway is that the level of service and delay at the driveways was not taken into consideration related to the queue for those turn movements. So,
was not taken into consideration in the TIA?
That is correct. So that's.
But didn't I hear him say they considered on-site parking as queuing?
So that is one issue.
Okay.
And, I mean, I would add, that the way the ordinance is written, TIA is required for certain thresholds. So this development met that level for the threshold that they submitted.
We didn't even meet the level to be required for a TIA.
Let's, if you.
I think following the new ITE levels, it met the threshold. But the code doesn't require right now for it to be approved by a traffic engineer. So it gets to the level of when we have the discussion, if there is some concerns with the recommendations, that the discussions can basically stop, because at that point, our code doesn't require, like other entities, for it to be approved by the city. And in this particular case, I'm not saying they did a horrible job. The engineer did a good job. I think what we're looking at is, I've been in the traffic department for 8 years, and we've been called on most of the schools here in the city. And every time we try to, and especially when we see a new site, try to mitigate past experiences, because we end up with the calls. We end up with the calls from the citizens who complain, the residents who are concerned with the safety of their kids. What we've learned is that different schools, different school districts handle traffic circulation differently. So in Flower Bluff, like you mentioned, they have a system down because all the schools are on one corridor. They have the assistance of staff. They have the assistance of uniformed officers. Other school districts don't. And within a school district, you then have, within certain school districts, you have different demographics. So some schools have the reliance on staff to help. TM hires officers to assist. CCISD, most schools rely on school staff if the staff is available. So when we're looking at the circulation, we've seen different TIAs, and it's accurate that if you look at the layout, that this many cars should be able to stack on site. But when the school opens, and this is what we've seen in recent schools, it's happened at Windsor as well. When the school opens, the principal then dictates the traffic circulation because it's dependent on the kids, the dismissal times. And so that plays into it. And although the study shows, yes, it's accurate, you should be able to stack this many cars. But in theory, what dictates is the principal and the plan, the dismissal times. And those are the challenges that we end up working through, because when you have separate dismissal times, you have different areas where parents have to pick up their kids. That dictates where they park and how they access their kids. And in looking at this particular situation, being an elementary school, you're going to need, parents are going to want to walk up to pick up their kids. They're going to want to park. And, with the challenges, as Al mentioned, with the school site kind of going ahead of the street layout, we were stuck in a predicament of how do we mitigate those issues. If you go with the on-street parking, you can have the 2 lanes, but when you're going to have opposing traffic, yes, that northbound traffic should be less. The school site is in a remote location. So all this traffic will be coming off of Yorktown onto Oso Parkway, making that left turn movement. When they're exiting, hopefully they turn right. But at some point in the future, you're going to have a middle school nearby. So that added traffic and that circulation are things that we're looking at, not just with the elementary school, but when the middle school is in place. And, not only looking at another point, looking at the traffic circulation during AM or PM times, but when you have events at the school, what happens then? Where do parents park? And now you're incorporating not only, if you have school functions, you have family members that may want to attend as well. But this is why that recommendation, when Diego worked with, the applicant, he was insistent upon going with the median option on this section and then having on-street parking later when that middle school appears. We're working within the available right-of-way that was presented. Otherwise, we probably would have recommended something bigger to accommodate all our based on our past experiences.
Thank you.
Renee,
Do you have a question for staff or?
Yeah, question for Renee. So on.
Let's just make sure if you have a question for applicant, and we can finish the public hearing and we'll get back to the staff, please. Is there any other question for the applicant at this time?
I just have one more. It's really a
Just for the
clarification.
applicant.
Yeah, for the applicant. Can you verify that the TIA did take into consideration the future use of the middle school?
Yes, it actually takes in consideration all of our featured land use in that whole 250-acre corridor that we own. But we also took in consideration the 30 or so acres that we don't own. The TIA takes everything in consideration. We've even gotten with the city and even got their master plans for the Yorktown design to take that into consideration. So it looks at the full scope, yes, sir. And I will add that this is probably one of the first TIAs that the CCISD has done for the city of Corpus Christi. They were required to do a traffic mitigation TIA. That's why this is different than other presented schools or schools in the area. And this was also a TIA done for the land development. No other CCISD schools, because once those properties are already zoned, they can go and actually build a school. They don't have to get a TIA, so.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak regarding this item?
I just want to make one,
Yes, sir.
one comment. I want you to understand what has gone on. We prepared a very detailed presentation, and when I saw it, I thought, well, that's too much because you only have a few minutes. It's already after 7 o'clock. But in the end, this is the point, and Moses brought it up himself. Sorry, the developer brought it up himself. And he said, you can't control how people behave, right? And the slides that Renee showed us is proof of that, right? People park. I can imagine people just parking in the suicide lane, they call it in the East Coast, just waiting so they can, because they don't want to get in the queuing of the school, right? So here's what's before you. The 80-foot right-of-way is needed. We require that dedication at the plat, which was approved. You approved the preliminary plat. If you remove that and go to the 60-foot, if we come back later and say, hey, this is really like a slow road, we're going to need to widen it or do other mitigations, we are limited. We cannot do that in the future. If this engineer's assessment of the 300 acres of the development is wrong, we're handcuffed. So it's a decision that we're looking at beyond 7 years to say, hey, one day, surely we're going to need this 80 feet to do something other than what it is. Because he's right, the TIA, yes, it can exist. Moses said, hey, it's two C1 collectors. That is correct. But the parkway needs to be a little larger because the school wants to front this parkway. So we've had history, like Renee said, of schools and all of the challenges we have. And in my 3 years, it's like, wow, my gosh, aren't we better planners than this? And that's really what this is about. The 80 feet is for future mitigation should we need that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak regarding this item? None. At this time, I will close the public hearing and entertain a further discussions. Commissioner York, you have a question for staff?
Yes, for Renee or for the traffic department. So developer did a TIA, and I know staff has other recommendations. Did staff conduct a TIA of their own, or how did y'all arrive at your recommendations?
The UDC has a requirement based on the threshold. So once, the current standard is once you hit 500 or more trips, then a TIA is required. This is actually the fourth TIA that CCISD has done. They did
No,
one
I understand
for,
that. What I'm asking is, so staff had their own recommendations of median and several other things. Did those come from us? Did staff do their own TIA and determine that, or how did y'all come up to your recommendations of median and whatever the other ones were?
Well, I think the recommendations came out from once we saw the school site, like Al mentioned, the school site started ahead. So we had asked when we looked at the layout and if the school site and the driveways could be altered, and that wasn't going to happen. So Moses is correct. He's stuck in the middle as the developer. He has to develop the street layout. So his responsibility then is developing a street section now to accommodate the use. Normally the street section is built, and then when the use comes in, they include any mitigation measures on that existing street. This kind of went backwards. The site came up, and now he has to build the street and develop the street. So when we met with the applicant, the recommendation was to do the TIA because we felt it met the threshold and include mitigation measures based on the school layout. So that's how those recommendations were arrived, looking at the school layout and I guess basically being told we were going to keep the driveways where they're at and layout as is. We felt that there were other things that could be done, but with the school site being set, then I guess the responsibility became the applicants to then develop a street section to mitigate any possible issues.
Sorry, one more question. The developer's engineer that did the TIA was telling us earlier that you could keep the right-of-way they're requesting, but that there were options available for changing the way, what's between the curbs, whether it's parking or 3 lanes, and they were open to making some changes. Is staff, does that work better for staff, or would that work with y'all, that if the right-of-way goes down, he's saying it works, but they could change, part of it has a median, part of it doesn't, and the engineer's saying that wouldn't affect the right-of-way. How do you feel about that?
Well, if you're stuck with the 60-foot right-of-way, I know it's like, 38 feet of pavement, right? No, 36 feet. 36 feet of pavement, I'm trying to think on the fly. But 36 feet of pavement, but that would allow for 2 12-foot lanes and possibly, 12-foot for a center turn lane. But that center turn lane, if you're adding a median, you need that extra width for a curbing to separate, the traffic in that turn lane from any through traffic. So that's why you need a little bit wider width. But like Al stated, what we're looking for is, the recommendations for the 80 feet, at least with the available room, you have a possibility to mitigate any potential issues. Because as much as, I give credit to, the traffic engineers that work on the studies, it's not always right. And we can't always, as much as we try to plan, we can't plan everything correctly. And if we limit ourselves, we give ourselves no room for any type of improvement or mitigation. And that's what we're requesting it to stay as is.
Thank you.
Commissioner Miller, you have a question?
My last question with regards to the TIA is slide number 18 suggests that the applicant's TIA did not take into account the full boundaries of the proposed middle school. Is that correct?
Yes, the TIA itself has another map that is similar to this one, but a little bit farther reaching. But even then, it doesn't cover that entire shape that you see on slide 18. It does cut short on the top part. I guess the panhandle portion of it is not included in the entire footprint of the TIA. So that's why on this slide I made sure to put suspected middle school boundary. We don't have the data yet. We don't know enough about the middle school, the layout. We don't know anything about it. And so given that this is something like the boundary, we don't know if the TIA covers it or not. It doesn't appear like it does. We just don't know enough. The TIA includes, I guess from this you can see the 2 signaled intersections. Let's see, Rodfield and Fred's Folly. Those are the only 2 intersections outside of the development that was taken into consideration. So the footprint of the middle school is going to be reaching farther north, farther west. It will be encompassing a larger area than these few signals.
Okay.
Question about the middle school. I understand the threshold for a TIA, I guess, either just recently changed or it will change in the near future with the code updates, I think. But what I'm getting at is in the future, when they permit that middle school, will that trigger another TIA?
I can't remember what the number of trips are, but it may, yes, it may possibly. I know.
And the reason I'm asking is because if I know that right now it's 500 trips, I understood it was going to get reduced, which means this might, but if it does, then is there a possibility that additional mitigation measures could be required then, if they're needed?
If our code is updated prior to this development, it would definitely trigger a TIA. At the current threshold, it's still a possibility using the 11th edition, I think, of the ITE.
When are the code updates expected?
We're going to be reviewing Chapter 8 in probably the next 2 months. So they're coming soon.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time...
I have one more question. One more comment. It's really a question. And we're harping on the TIA because I'm having a hard time understanding the process. If we're requiring a developer to present a TIA, and then we're looking at it and saying, well, these engineers are just wrong. Like, how, I can't wrap my brain around that. Isn't it subjective? I mean, they're a licensed professional engineering service that's saying, this is what our professional opinion is, and then the city's looking at it and saying, we don't agree with you in this case. So I'm having a hard time with that one.
Let me see if I can address it. Al Raymond, Development Services. Plans are submitted to Public Works and Development Services every day. And those plans have seals on it, so Development Services reviews it for permit, and we compare it, and those plans should come in saying, hey, we meet the code. But in fact, they attempt to, but they don't. As our traffic engineer, Renee, has said, the gentleman, the firm did a great job, but we know more than just the process of analyzing numbers and saying, voila, here's the result, because we have years of built environment proof, right? So it's not like we say, like the developers says, well, you guys said you wanted the data, I gave you the data, now act on the data. That's true. The data is one part of our decision making, but we have the built environment. We got lots of schools, and I'm sure many of you had kids at those schools. Like, damn, I can't even get in. How am I going to turn left? How can I get out going right? It's really crazy, and that's the part that's not captured, right? I'm sure he did a great job, great firm. But we get the data, and then we use the reality of the built environment, and we go, okay, and that's why one of you asked about, well, how did you get the raised medium and all of that? Because we've experienced it before, and so to avoid that, so that citizens won't say, look at these idiots. Didn't this happen at the other school? Why are we doing it the same way? So we're just trying to utilize our experience and knowledge and our professionalism. We're not certainly shooting down the professionals, but that happens every day, right? And so we have to assess what's given to us, and that which works, meets the code and all of that, we're happy. But when it doesn't, we add our experience and say, hey, maybe we should move this to the left, a little to the right, and so that's why we are where we are now. You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Garza.
Okay, so I see that there's just so much going on here, but one of my main concerns is the fact that when this is all said and done and then the new middle school comes to be developed, we actually do not know exactly how these streets are going to be for the benefit of the safety of these kids. Because I'm hearing everyone, and the middle school has yet to be developed. So there's a lot of unanswered questions here that we really don't know yet. So I'm concerned about the safety of these kids, because I'm a mother. My kids are grown, but I remember getting in line, picking up these kids, because in today's world, I want to be the one to go pick up my kids. I want to be walking up. I want to find a safe place to park my car to go pick up the kids or whatever it is. So I just find it hard to understand everything here, because we still don't know the full picture. We don't know. However, the experiences that have already happened in the other schools, that says a lot for me, because we've seen it happen. We know it to happen. I live in the Calallen, and I see that happen even in front of the Calallen High School on 624 Northwest Boulevard. So I'm just not as convinced to be able to side with the waiver, because I'm concerned for the safety of these kids, yet, and the fact that this other middle school is yet to be developed. I don't have a lot of answers yet, and I'm sure that everybody here has worked really hard, the engineers, everybody. But as it says, I mean, we have no room for expansion in case anything happens. We have nothing there. Once it's said and done on the 60, that's it. We're done. There's nothing else that we can do to expand it if anything else should come up when the middle school does develop. So I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Do we have a motion at this time? I mean, we've had several conversations. Commissioner Garza?
I'll make a motion. Based on everything we've heard, and everything from all the departments, I move that we deny the waiver.
We have a motion to deny the waiver and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Aye.
Gina, could you make a roll call, please? So for the record, the commission is to, the motion is to deny the waiver, correct?
That's correct.
Just want to make sure.
Okay. Chairman Zarguni?
Aye.
Vice Chairman Miller?
Aye.
Commissioner York?
Nay.
Commissioner Mandel?
Aye.
Commissioner Salazar Garza?
Aye.
Commissioner Munoz?
Nay.
Commissioner Motagi?
Aye.
Motion passed.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to last item of the night tonight. I do want to thank everyone for your patience.
Was there a plat that went with that?
The preliminary had already been submitted.
So we don't need a separate vote? Okay.
So item number 9, the new zoning. Yes, Mr. Demes.
Well, as they say in a certain movie, we're going to do the short version.
We're going to make it very short, I promise.
So those of you who recall, the zoning case 1022-07, Ariba Development, located at Sessions Road in 37, has returned with the amended zoning request to cover all 14 acres. If you recall from the previous case, it was originally 10, and now it is the entire 14 on a new application. So as you can see, moving along on the land use maps, we still have the same surrounding questions about single-family subdivision. There is an adjacent single-family to the east and west, and to the south would now be I-37 touching the boundary of the subject property. Now, what is updated of the now 39 notices mailed out, we received 21% in opposition with 0 in favor, which is roughly 8 notices. And here is a closer view to give you a 3D perspective of the subject property. And a closer view, one of the original concerns on the first presentation was the proximity of Sessions Road as kind of the midpoint between the entrance and exit ramp. Here are the same existing road conditions of Sessions Road. Much of the discussion we had at the last meeting was about the improvement of Sessions Road itself. Now, staff analysis and recommendation, it is pretty much the same recommendation from the last Planning Commission meeting, meaning we would be recommending a special permit in lieu of granting an RM1 and RM2 zoning district. The conditions of that special permit would center around limiting the entire development to 280 units as its maximum, requiring a buffer yard where it borders upon residential properties. Of course, any building heights, if they're adjacent to those single-family properties, must adjust their setbacks as listed in the UDC, which is a common section that's used for many different multifamily developments. The most important, too, would be Sessions Road itself, is that it would be complete prior to the issuance of building permits. And then regarding 37, there was a discussion about the installation of delineators. Obviously, we can't mandate that another governmental agency agree with our decision. So what we are requesting of the property owner is that they show a good faith effort to coordinate with TxDOT and get a final decision from TxDOT whether or not that entity would approve for the installation of delineators to get some feedback. But that is our updated recommendation for the special permit, and if there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to address them.
Thank you, sir. Commissioners, any questions for staff at this time?
Yes, will that C1 collector have parking on either side or a center drive lane or turning lane?
No medians this time.
Okay.
I didn't see that on the menu.
My only other question, I'm still kind of confused from the last meeting because Sessions Road currently has a 40-foot right-of-way, correct?
Currently, yes, that is correct. It is a 40-foot dedicated right-of-way, but only about half is actually built out.
And the additional dedication to get it to the 60-foot to meet the C1 Collector Street standard is going to come from the applicant's property?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question? None. I'd like to open the public hearing at this time. Is the applicant would like to speak here to speak? Please, for the sake of the time, keep your comments to short, brief, to 3 minutes. We have a lot of people that would like to speak, so please state your name and address for the record.
Murph Hudson, representing Urban Engineering, and the client, 2725 Swanton Avenue. I'll try and boil this down as quick as I possibly can. TxDOT will not allow a driveway from this property onto the frontage road. So all the traffic from this development will be discharging to Sessions Road and then to the frontage road or some other route. That said, under existing zoning, if we were to develop the property as the existing zoning allows and do apartments and single-family residential, the average daily traffic count would exceed the C1 collector allowable. That's as it exists today with doing nothing. The applicant has asked the city to consider a special permit so that they can restrict the development to a size that will maintain the average daily traffic count to a level that will not exceed what the C1 collector will allows. And so in addition to that, he has also agreed to reconstruct the Sessions Road, which is in significantly bad condition currently. He's agreed to reconstruct that road at his own expense to improve traffic flow. Additionally, there was a lot of comments last time we were here that said that we would have to impact private properties to do that. As you stated, all the additional right-of-way required is going to come from the applicant's side, and so we will not affect any of those properties to the east of this development as far as the redevelopment of Sessions Road. So we think this is a win-win for everybody concerned, for the city, for the residents. It's an improvement to their road. It's an improvement. It's a widening of their road so that their traffic and safety concerns will be addressed. We just think it's a win-win all the way around. The city, we don't develop it to its full extent. We restrict our development according to the special permit such that we're spreading the development out over the entire acreage, not doing the mass density that we could do at the front of the property and the single family at the back of the property. So we'd like you to take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that would like to speak regarding item number 9? If you would please state your name and address for the record, and again, keep in mind you have 3 minutes for your comment.
My name is Tara Mylett, and I live at 3929 Mott's Drive, which is right off of Sessions. I have a couple of concerns, even though they've graciously agreed to redo part of Sessions. The problem is that they're going to have to redo all of Sessions. If you extend over to the property side of the applicant, there's electrical poles there, which basically you're going to need to come in and do drainage and sidewalks, bring in an apartment, since Cal Allen and TM both use that road. Two buses in the morning from each district and 2 to 3 buses from each district in the afternoon. And there's already kids waiting on Sessions to catch the bus as of right now in the dark. So sidewalks should be put in for the safety of the children. I admire this commission painstakingly looking at the schools' safety issue and the kids getting in and out of school safely. I ask for that same consideration for this. There's so many places in Cal Allen, Toloso that apartments can be built. This area right here is already so dangerous and so congested. A trucker spoke last time about putting the median along the road, how dangerous it would be. You're now directing traffic getting off of the exit at Violet, which will back it up into the freeway, which is going to be a danger. You're also not allowing the residents to come out of Session to take the left-hand turn onto Violet to go to HEB. They're going to have to go to McKenzie. McKenzie just had a traffic study done. It's already at 143%. You're now asking 280, let's just say 200 apartments. That's now putting at least 800 more cars down Mackenzie because they're going to go down Mackenzie through the neighborhood. So you're going to need speed bumps. I'm asking for y'all to consider the safety for us in this city to start doing safety before we have a problem and then have to take 10 years to figure out how to solve the problem. Single-family homes would not bring that much traffic, but it will bring more traffic, and we have to develop and we have to grow. There's going to be a drainage problem. That property sits higher than anywhere else along Sessions, but you're really going to need to expand Sessions over to the applicant's side and possibly have to move telephone poles to extend it and to add sidewalks. That is the only way to make this a safe situation if this commission decides to vote on this. Because if you really do want to do safety and keep the kids in mind and the neighborhood in mind, this is the only solution to do this. This is already a dangerous, congested area as it is right now, and the traffic will pick up as it always does, and it is very bad in the morning and very bad in the afternoon. And everybody coming out onto Mackenzie trying to go to work to turn left will now have to wait for everybody speeding through. They're going to cut through and zoom all the way down Sessions, and we're going to start having a lot of accidents. And I ask y'all to take safety into consideration.
Thank you for your comment.
Judy Blackwell, 10834 Grand Teton, corner of Grand Teton and Sessions Road. And we appreciate the effort that they're going to make to widen that road. However, if they, and in their own words, it will be 60 feet. But if you look at this, and this is their proposed property, the trailer park is right here. And if they widen this road to 60 feet, and they stop at their property, which they said they were going to do, then it goes back down to 16 feet. I measured from my street to the edge of the across the street. It's 16 feet. And if they widen this to 60 feet from the access road down to the end of their property, then what's going to happen there? It's going to go back to 16 feet? How does that work? The trailer park is right there. People live right there. I don't know how that's going to work. So, and also, we want to know if this is keeping with the consistency of the comprehensive plan for our area. I mean, building apartment complex right next to our single-family dwelling, is that part of, consistent with our comprehensive plan for that area? And we feel by changing the zoning to multifamily apartments, it's going to change the character of our neighborhood. So, you know, we want the best for our neighborhood. And we're wondering how all of this is going to help our neighborhood. So, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
My name's Daniel Falcon, and I live at 3737 Sessions Road, Lot 2, and that's the trailer park. And I'm speaking for all the tenants that are there. I own the trailer park, and like the two previous people that spoke, school buses come down Sessions Road. They go down to the hill at the bottom where the two hills come down, and there's a little bridge there. They stop there. They let off kids, and they just stop there for about 5 minutes, and they put out the red stop sign. They let out the kids. They go in that neighborhood. Then they climb up the hill to where the trailer park begins, and they stop again every day, and they let out kids and stuff like that. And like I said before, the way the road is built, two pickup trucks that pass each other just about slap mirrors. And you can't go to the side because the road's torn up on both sides. Both sides of the road is big potholes. There's no sidewalk there. The road just ends, but it's all rough and potholes. And as far as the traffic goes, these guys, people come out of work at 5 o'clock and so forth, and they come screaming on the Violet exit. I mean, they're going 50 miles an hour all the way up to the light where you can catch Violet Road and go left and go to HEB and all that stuff. But they're really moving. And when you get off Violet Road, I mean, it's dangerous to get off the Violet Road exit and then try to take Sessions Road. It's like about 40 feet, and you got to do a hard right. And if you're going fast because people are behind you and you don't want to get rear-ended, it's a little bit of a trick when it's crowded. When it's not crowded, it's okay, late at night, early in the morning, and so forth. But what I'm saying is that you put this apartment over here, and all this traffic's going to get so congested, you're going to have people backing up the exit, just like Everhart when it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon. They're going to be backed up on the freeway, and one lane out of the freeway is going to be all bumper to bumper because it's going to be slow getting off of that exit. And it's just going to be it's going to be a mess for the whole area, traffic-wise, and it's going to be dangerous. And as far as the water goes, I don't know what they're going to do about that. There's nothing, no structure that's on that thing. I mean, I heard a lot of talk sitting here at the beginning, and I'd rather see a liquor store go up on a place. Really, it'd be a lot better off. We'd have a lot less traffic, and we wouldn't have we wouldn't have all this dangerous situations with school kids and all this other stuff. But they're wanting to do too much. I mean, these people just want to do too much. And with single-family houses, we'd have 30 or 40 people. What was it said last time? 3,000 trips a day out of this apartment? That's insane.
If you would please
They could
wrap your
put it
comments, sir.
someplace else. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Freda Martin. I live at 10829 Silverton Drive. Many years ago, I lived on a street that was a quarter mile long. I happened to live the second to last house of the quarter mile. And what happens when people drive a quarter mile, they increase speed. Now, if people are coming, this is the one from the last meeting, okay? So if you're coming out Sessions, and I watched people on Sessions because everyone was home for the holiday this week, okay? And you come off the highway, you take a right-hand turn off on McKenzie, okay? And you're gonna come down McKenzie to avoid Sessions, because we all know it's a mess there, gonna be a mess, okay? And by the time you go around the bend, down the hill, up the hill, you're now accelerating and you're going very fast. Now, okay, this is the proposed area, okay? And we're going to fix Sessions. We're going to make it wider, which is really nice, and fix it, take out the potholes, okay? But it's going to stop right here. Here's McKenzie, okay? So we're going to go from a nice wide street with no potholes back to what Sessions is now. And it's not going to be safe because you're going to have people winging down here and hanging a left to get into where they're going to go. Please think of the safety of our children, okay? If they come down here and decide that there's too much traffic on McKenzie, we're going to come down Sessions, all right? We've lived there for 22 years. Our kids are grown up. But what's happened is that their kids are now there. And we've got little ones that are out playing, okay? And I really don't want to see anyone hurt. But this is not good to have this amount, this number of people, this number of units into that area. I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Munoz, and I live at 3806 Castle Ridge. So I live off of the separate entrance, which is McKenzie. So I don't oppose development, but I do have just a couple clarification questions for staff and just a couple concerns. I wasn't here for the first public hearing for this item, so I'm having a really hard time understanding the text dot component of this because I think it's really, really important of how that's going to impact the traffic. So I know staff didn't really expand on that, but I would like to learn more about that, because I don't think that putting a special condition on a permit, which hasn't been fully vetted by the separate entity at this time, is beneficial. I feel like it should be fully vetted before it's a special permit condition. My next question, or my next comment, relates to a lot of what our neighbors have said. Is I live off of McKenzie, and I already know that that's going to be a cut-through traffic, and there's nothing we can do about it. But I would like to see, as a special condition, that Sessions Road is expanded to McKenzie. Whether it's by city participation, development participation, whatever it is, I think that's an important part that needs to be addressed at this time as a part of the special condition. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else would like to speak?
Daryl Keach, 10834 Juliana Drive. I'm here again in opposition to this zoning change. Quoting the presentation from the city staff on slide 8, said the future land use map recommends low-density residential. The proposed zoning is to high-density residential use. The subject property is adjacent to residential uses on two sides. There is insufficient road infrastructure to support the traffic generated. That's all from the city staff. And then it says the site is inappropriate due to incompatibility of surrounding uses, unquote. So talk about harm to the existing neighborhood per the UDC. I don't know who else does it better than the city staff. Previously, there was a comment that we need housing due to development coming. Well, I work for one of the organizations responsible for much of the development, and I can tell you that these employees won't live in apartments. They're high-income earners wanting single-family homes as this property is currently zoned. If the complex is built, the ADT will be over 4,300 cars. There is still an undeveloped piece of commercial property, as you can see on the map, that is not reflected in the counts that we're looking at, and probably will push the ADT on Sessions to over 6,000. Twice what an urban collector is designed to handle, but the plan is to only expand to a county collector standards. Why not expand Sessions to urban standards? We are in the city limits after all. Also, the developer is only going to be required to expand Sessions only to the length of their property, as others have pointed out, thus creating a bottleneck between Grand Teton and Silverton, where their property ends, a full city block and a half away from McKenzie. How does this solve anything, and how is this urban planning? And speaking of McKenzie, it's already over capacity. Official TxDOT traffic counts from their website show McKenzie is already over 3,800 on that 80 average daily trips, and this expansion would dump even more traffic there. And I also have a question for the city attorney. How is this not contract zoning? There's a long list of reasons of why the city department was going to deny this until the developer offered to buy the city a street. What do we as residents need to buy the city to get this permit denied? And I also want to know why the signs were not posted for this meeting for today. The signs that are on the property still have the old meeting dates and actually have this meeting listed as yesterday. There are no signs for this meeting tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Abraham Cameron. I live at 10809 Ashley Drive. I actually haven't received any information about tonight's meeting because I live too far down. It's a cul-de-sac. But my wife and I just moved into the neighborhood with a 5-year-old son and a 1-year-old daughter. So far, we've seen tons of kids playing on that cul-de-sac, and we're just unsure of how that will affect coming up, like down the road, I guess. Kids riding bikes, playing ball on the streets, just kind of hanging out, I guess, throughout the neighborhood. Also, one thing that no one else has mentioned yet, I don't think, is McKenzie has a very big dip, which actually destroyed my wife's car recently, and you can see lots of gouges in that dip. So there's probably going to be a lot of impact on that with 250 or 500 cars going down that as well. So just improving Sessions will be a good start, but I think McKenzie would need to be improved as well. So I just want to be here for that. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak regarding this item?
Good evening. My name is Nader Karimi. I live in San Antonio, 21911 Rainier Lane, San Antonio, Texas. Couple of items that brought it up. Yes, we understand the street is not safe. It's 16 feet wide, the street. Of course, it's not safe. But if we go with the zoning we have right now, and we build a residential in the back, it's gonna be roughly about 50 residential homes. So it's gonna be 2-car garage. You're looking at 3-car house. So 150 cars over there. And we have in the front, then we can build about 165 apartment units. So technically, we shouldn't have to fix the street if we're going that way. But we are proposing to fix that street, make it 26 feet wide, make it nice, and all of this by changing the zoning, the way we want 280 units. So if we go the proper, the first way, and don't do the residential, they don't do the apartment, do the residential in the back, and we have the zoning for 33 unit an acre, so we do that in the front, we get the same quantity of the traffic with no fixing the street and nothing like that. So I just want to make sure that everybody is in the same page. We are here to improve that area, make the street better, safer for the kids and for the family, make it nicer. And with this, both way, I believe in, because we have the street the way we want it, they want it, city wants it, and we make it that way. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Vic Nazari with MVR Construction Company, 4105 Rayado Creek. There's no doubt that Session needs improvement, and we're here to help that. What they're requesting is improve all of Session, which is not possible. We're willing to go beyond to fix not only our half, but the other half that is supposed to be maintained by the city of Corpus Christi. If they do want Session to be improved further than our property, we are okay with doing that as long as the city participates in the funds. While we're there, we'd be more than happy to fix it. But as long as the city participates in fixing that, which is long overdue. Session roads, the last time it was maintained was in 2002, if I'm not mistaken. The danger of Session, whether it's residential, apartment, commercial, is there. Nothing we can do. We're not adding any traffic if we were to keep this as a residential, as everybody wants. The traffic will be the same, residential or apartment. But again, we are here to make Session better. We're trying to be good neighbors. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak regarding this item? I'm sorry? If you already spoken, no, you have one chance to speak. If someone else wants to speak, you're more than welcome to come before I close the public hearing. Please state your name and address for the record.
Okay, my name is George Martin. I live at 10829 Silverton Drive. What the whole object here is that there's just not anywhere for the traffic to go. You go out Sessions, you got to turn right on the access road. The state's not going to build any more entryways into the access road. You go the other way, you're going to be going through a neighborhood which doesn't have the streets to handle the traffic. I don't care if you build houses or you build apartments, there's going to be more traffic. And there's no way to get the traffic in or the traffic out. I mean, it's just simple. Unless they come up with more ways for people to get on the access road out of that subdivision or whatever they're going to build, there's no access. And you're going to have more accidents, people are going to get hit, people are going to get killed up there because of the fact that you can't get in and you can't get out. Pure and simple. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak regarding this item?
Hello, my name is Autumn Wilson. I live at 3925 Motts. As many others have said, Sessions is an unsafe street. Right now, those lots are empty. It is an unsafe street right now. Nobody has talked about the elevation on the street. You know, we're used to Corpus, it's mainly flat land. You have all the visibility. When you're coming down 37, you take the exit and then you make a hard right turn on Sessions. There's no lanes, but you're going into all different lanes. That's an accident waiting to happen as it is right now. You put apartment buildings and more houses in there, you're just gonna double the chances of an accident, or triple. It's unsafe, regardless of how you look at it. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Juan Mendoza. I live on 4806 Guth Road on the backside. And I just want to know if there's going to be, if they do build something, are they going to build like an alleyway or an easement so the city can run lines and stuff on the backside? That's all I want to know. I don't know if they're going to, that's going to take more property off of their building stuff if they add like an alleyway or something. So city services can run their lines and stuff through there. That's all I want to know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Last call. At this time, I will close the public hearing and entertain further discussions and questions for staff. Commissioners, does anyone have any questions for staff? Commissioner Miller.
Okay, Andrew, I got 3 quick questions.
Just 3, all right.
What is the difference in the rural standard and the urban standard C1 collector street section?
It's a good question. Off the top of my head, we'd have to bring up the
I guess
section of the
specifically,
EDC.
I know, so due to the availability of adjacent storm drainage, you know, curb and gutter may or may not make sense.
Sure.
Is sidewalks a requirement on a rural C1 collector?
No.
Is, because I'm coming to some sort of a compromise here. I'm trying to. Okay, that's question number 1. Question number 2, whenever you go and expand an existing right-of-way from 40 to 60 feet, and that right-of-way dumps out onto a TxDOT road, does that require permitting from TxDOT? Because if it was anybody else, if I was modifying an approach for a apartment complex or for a commercial development or anything else, if you touch that approach, then you got to get a TxDOT permit, and they got to look at what you're going to do there and everything else, and they, you know.
I don't know if I would use the exact word permit. I would say that there is absolutely coordination that has to happen whenever there's a CIP project, especially they treat it just like any other what quote-unquote access permit, meaning a discussion has to happen, what your design speed is, how are entrances, ingress and egress going to happen in the street that is city maintained versus a TxDOT roadway. I wouldn't go as far, again, to say a quote-unquote permit, but absolutely coordination is happening and discussions are obviously happening.
And does the city have any right to, if TxDOT gives it a cursory review and says, yeah, that's fine, does not require the applicant to put in any kind of delineators or anything to maintain that safety, does the city have any jurisdiction to, like, could we say, you absolutely have to have those delineators as this body?
That is why the language is carefully worded to say coordination with TxDOT. We can't mandate that another agency agree with our findings, much like the discussion before of engineer versus engineer when it comes to TIAs. TxDOT may have a feeling that they want more mitigation to happen on the street. But at the end of the day, we're recommending that coordination happen between the developer and TxDOT, and that evidence is shown that some form of communication, good faith effort was done, and TxDOT is giving a decision of yay or nay to proposal of delineators.
But if the city of Corpus Christi wants to add a new street that goes into a TxDOT right away, they don't have to get any kind of permission from TxDOT.
We do have to absolutely have coordination with TxDOT. If it then requires signalization, if it requires some other means of traffic management or mitigation, that opens the door to coordination with another agency, in this case, TxDOT.
Because I can tell you right now, as a commercial builder, if this was a driveway and it had this kind of adjacency and for the type of use that this development is going to be, if I was trying to get a driveway permit at the end of an off-ramp, I wouldn't be able to get it from TxDOT.
Driveway permits are access to private property, and you're terminating at a specific site. In this case, this is a public roadway, which is the constant circulation of vehicles. It's similar but different.
Okay. And then, let's see, and then the last question is the continuing notification saga. Right now I'm just going off of one of the gentleman's comments that the sign was not changed.
The notices were sent out. When you table to date certain, the sign does not have to be updated. We tabled to date certain at the last planning commission meeting. Technically, we didn't have to really send another notices. That is a courtesy when you table to date certain. And in this case, as it's a quote-unquote new case, we wanted to make sure, cross all of our i's, dot our t's, and send out notification letters.
Okay. That's all the questions I had.
Anyone else has any question?
Of course, we'll ensure that the council meeting is updated on that sign.
So I do have a question. Obviously, we all can agree from one thing in this room that everyone is concerned about the public safety of that Session Road. And of course, with applicant, I would say, generosity to wanted to fix the road for the part that they own, that leaves an uncertainty of room of what happens to the remainder of the session. The applicant stated that they will be open to expand their development if there is a participation from the city to make sure that the public safety is in place addressed. Is there something that city is willing to participate, or is there something that can be discussed to make sure that because obviously, as far as I'm concerned about it, regarding they build, excuse me, a commercial or residential development, for me, public safety is the biggest concern. I've said that before, I say that again. And we need to make sure that developing such a major project like this does not create a problem to the public safety. So are we sure that the part that they are going to expand satisfy the public safety? What about the rest of the road? I don't know how many feet is remaining that will be unconstructed, but most likely if that's something that is not going to be addressed now, it will probably never will be fixed, as it hasn't been the last 20-some years when I read it. So is there any city participation? Is there any other ideas that can be discussed to make sure public safety is not...
Ideas can always be discussed. It does open a little bit of Pandora's box, because you would have to acquire land that is owned currently by the trailer park, just as the developer is having to dedicate so much roadway. Someone would have to acquire the land in order to potentially construct a widening.
I understand,
that is
sir, but
a
this
complete
is...
variable we couldn't address at this time.
Sure.
Also, I'd like to add that typically in our participation funds are for oversizing greater than a C1. And this is a C1 collector on the UTP. So it's unlikely that we would use our participation funds for that.
Are they required to have a sidewalk on C1 collector?
If it is to the urban standard, yes. If it is to the rural standard, no.
So in this case?
This is to the rural standard, so no.
No. Okay. I want to leave my last question for him.
I have a quick question for the applicant.
I've closed the public hearing.
Well, I just wanted to know if they'd be amenable to a sidewalk as a compromise on both sides of the C1 expansion, but if
I
it's
will
closed,
only
it's closed.
I will only open the public hearing to the applicant if they want to address or...
Urban standard includes underground drainage, true.
That's, and I'm not supposed to talk to you, but
Yeah, let's. I will open the public hearing back for the question for the applicant. Applicant, only applicant. The question is for the applicant.
The answer is no, and the reason for that is because of the ditches that have to be redone next to the street.
Thank you.
There is no room for sidewalks.
Okay, thank you. I will close the public hearing at this time, and I will not open the public hearing again. So, is there any other question for staff at this time? None. We entertain a motion.
Who's it going to be?
Anybody?
I make a motion that we, what item are we?
9.
9. I make a motion that we approve item 9 as presented by staff.
I'll second.
We have a motion and second. Gina, could you make a roll call, please?
Chairman Zarzaguni,
Opposed.
Vice Chairman Miller,
opposed.
Commissioner York,
Yay.
Commissioner Mandel,
Aye.
Commissioner Salazar Garza,
Aye.
Commissioner Munoz,
Aye.
Commissioner Motagi. Motion pass.
So just for the record, we are the recommended body. This item will go to the city council. I believe the notices will be mailed
Another set of notices.
to y'all for the city council, and ultimately, the city council will be the final decision on this.
And I think it's also appropriate to mention what our, it's also appropriate.
Yes, you'll receive a green letter in the mail.
The 39 houses?
All those were noticed this same go-round, yes.
Not everybody down the country doesn't have to.
Everyone in the circle, everyone in the circle. Oh, what did you finish? So everyone in the circle, to answer everyone's question, are those that will receive a notice in the mail, which is 39 notices.
Okay, moving on to director's reports.
Good evening.
I got a question for you real quick. Is 20% the threshold? Did we need a supermajority?
Council
Council.
will need a supermajority.
So we didn't, they
We
did.
didn't need
No,
to?
That'll be a fun meeting, but yes,
Okay.
not planning commission, but council will need a supermajority. 7 of 9 must say yes.
And quick question, when does Legislar update? Because I printed this off this afternoon, and it was still at 0 in favor and 0 opposed.
Many notices came in yesterday and the day before. So you received the packet as of Friday,
Okay.
which none had come in. Which, it's not surprising, the holiday mail is probably slow.
But does it ever get updated on Legistar?
No.
No. Once it's posted, we can try to replace items, but you will see duplicates then, and it creates more confusion.
And the opposition, whenever it goes to council, does it get updated in the council packet?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, good evening. I think hopefully you've had an opportunity to meet our Development Services Engineer, Bria Whitmire. You had an opportunity to hear her present this evening, but if you haven't had a chance to say hello, please take that opportunity after the meeting and greet her. I wanted to report on our Unified Development Code update. We do have another DSTAC meeting this Friday at 9 o'clock to go over any updates. We had an opportunity to meet with the Island Stakeholders Group as well as with the Downtown Management District representatives. And so with our meeting this Friday, then we would like to go ahead and bring this forward in an open house format. We are planning on scheduling our open houses on Tuesday, December 13th. We'll have 2 open houses, one at 2 o'clock. It's 2 to 4 with a presentation at 2:30 at the Lindale Senior Center. That evening at from 6 to 8 with the presentation at 6:30 at the Ethel Irely Senior Center. On Wednesday, the 14th, we're going to have coffee with the consultants at the Development Services Department, so anybody could just drop in and, look at the exhibits and ask the consultants questions. Also on Wednesday, from 2 to 4, we'll be having an open house upstairs here at City Hall. And with the presentation being at 2:30, that'll be at the 6th floor conference room. And then we also have the briefing before Planning Commission on the 14th, so that'll be during the meeting. What we would like to do is for that particular briefing also have a simultaneous YouTube and Facebook broadcast. And so we would like to be able to receive questions from the public during that presentation. And so we're very excited. We're going to be having a dedicated website as well. So all that information will be forthcoming, and we'll be sure to get you all the dates, times, and our website that will have all the drafts. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Any future agenda item? None. We are adjourned.